I'm a fourth-generation Oregonian. Grew up in Eugene. My brother works in a mill. My uncles own mills. It's something that, if you're from the Northwest, it's something you do. I think I met Daniel here in Eugene. They called him the disgruntled one, just because he had sort of this nasty sort of attitude, and he was always sort of bitter, and he was always sort of pissed off, and he'd always challenge people for their stupid ideas, and so they sort of coined this nickname for him, the disgruntled one. I think Daniel arrived out here at about 1999, but to really understand, why these arsons were set, I think you got to go all the way back to a time when Daniel was still living back east. You got to go to about 1995, which was the Warner Creek timber sale. Well, Warner Creek's about 50 miles east of Eugene, and it's probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And in 1995, the Forest Service decided to open it up for logging. People went up there and created a blockade on a federal logging road to try to prevent, the logging of this place. So we created a documentary called Pickaxe, which is the story of Warner Creek.
There's more vehicles on the way, over. One grader followed by one Dudley.
We don't think you guys have the right to take a protected forest teeming with life, bid it and log it.
For a long time, people were fighting the Forest Service through like holding signs, letter writing, sort of a hippie-type approach to protest. But there was this new kind of protest that was becoming popular. People would call it sabotage or monkey wrenching. They would glue locks, they'd pull up survey stakes, they would maybe put sugar and gas tanks of bulldozers. At Warner Creek, just a simple little blockade turned into an all-out assault on the only way in to that forest. Protesters dug a series of trenches to keep logging trucks from getting to the forest. And then they built the wall. It looked like an old fort from the Wild Wild West, and it had a drawbridge, and it was really a cool blockade. We're drawing a line in the sand, and you can't come in here and destroy this place. And they stayed up there for about a year.
As a federal law enforcement officer, it's my duty to inform you that you're in violation.
You have 5 minutes to get out of here, and you have actually less than 5 minutes.
Early one morning, the Forest Service came up and arrested the protesters and knocked down the wall. That created a lot of bitterness toward the Forest Service. And soon after, things began to escalate. The first time I met Jacob Ferguson was at Warner Creek. He was sort of a cool dude. He didn't say much. He just did a lot of work. But I think it's really hard to know Jacob Ferguson unless you're on the inside of Jacob's life. This is the house I moved into right over here. And right at that time, Jacob Ferguson was living right over there. But Jacob was a pirate. He was definitely an outlaw. He tried to play a bad boy image, and he did it well, because I think he really was one. After Warner Creek, I think he really felt that the Forest Service was getting away with stuff. I think most of America feels that the U.S. Forest Service's job is to protect the forest. But the Forest Service is a part of the Department of Agriculture. And the Department of Agriculture looks upon these forests as crops. The U.S. Forest Service's real job is to provide trees for these timber companies so they can cut these trees for our national forests. They were cutting down these massive old-growth trees up to 750, even 1,000 years old, and were just massive. But I think Jake was tired of the talk. He was tired of just, the philosophizing. You guys, are you through talking shit now or what? Let's do it.
This investigation was the largest domestic terrorism case in the history of the United States. And the very first ELF action that occurred in the United States occurred at 2 ranger stations in the District of Orient. Mainstream legitimate environmental activists were absolutely shocked and disgusted with the fire. And they saw the burning of the Oak Ridge Ranger Station as a public relations disaster.
In the months after the ranger station fires, there was a split within the environmental movement. In Eugene, which was quickly becoming a hotbed of activism, a growing community of younger environmentalists cheered on the arsons. But most environmentalists argued that in a democracy, public protest was still a better way of making change. In the summer of '97, just a few months after the ranger station fires, an event took place in downtown Eugene that, for many, shook up the debate.
There was this place downtown. It had 40 old heritage trees, just beautiful. And they were going to put in a parking lot for Symantec, this big corporation next door. And they were going to cut down the trees to do it.
Activists began mobilizing to save the trees. But as they prepared to take the issue to the next city council meeting, the city suddenly announced that it would cut the trees one day before that public hearing.
On Sunday morning, about 2:30 in the morning, about 11 people went up into the trees to prevent them from being cut.
We just went and did it, hoping that we could stave off the cutting for one day until that public hearing.
Just for one day, so the citizens could talk to the city council the next day about saving them.
They came in right away wearing riot gear and gas masks and stuff like that.
So bang, bang, bang on the door at 8 in the morning. Some kid says, get out there, they're pepper spraying them in the trees, get your camera, you got to get there. I mean, they're pepper spraying them right now.
Hang in there, Jim!
They came up in a fire truck bucket and they cut my pants leg up to my groin so they could spray my leg with pepper spray.
Cutting, their pants and pepper spraying them in the ass and pepper spraying them in the balls, and while they were hanging from the limbs 40 feet up. People were on the street looking at this and going, what the fuck do you think you're doing? And so people were radicalized. They started jumping on the fence and going, quit that shit.
They're tear gassing the crowd and pepper spraying the crowd. It was just crazy, frantic scene that day.
And they used about 12 to 15 cans on Flynn, and he stayed up for, I think, about 6 or 7 hours, man.
And then they flushed me with a bunch of water, took me to the hospital, and then took me to jail. And so for the next 35 hours, I was soaking in pepper spray. My hands were orange for a week.
And so the argument that you need to work within the system was pretty well dashed by what the cops did on that day in Eugene. And June 1st was really the day that pissed off a lot of people in this town.